What's up, boys? Callsign Grimey here, and welcome to my AV-8B Harrier tutorial series, where I'm going to help you get in the air and fly the Harrier in a fast and easy manner. So with that being said, this series of tutorial videos is not for anyone that wants to learn the Harrier in a real-life one-for-one procedural way. There are many other DCS creators that have done those videos, which I encourage you to go watch. But for those of you that are more on a time constraint, just want to get in, get the basics down, and be able to fly this aircraft efficiently and effectively, this will be the series to allow you to do that. So welcome aboard. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, we're here in the Harrier in the dark, and we need to cold start it. We're going to do this fast and easy. And before we get started, quickly, if you have a Stream Deck, highly recommend going on to the DCS user files, searching for the profiles for the Harrier, and they have this for some of the other aircraft as well. It allows you to turn your Stream Deck into a control panel where you can use it to activate these buttons and switches to do a lot of this stuff. And I'll show you a picture of what mine looks like here and have it set up for my cold start process, which makes things very, very easy. That being said, if you don't have one, not a big deal. You can always bind some of the stuff to your HOTAS, or if you don't have room for it, just use your mouse. And that's what we're going to do here. Combination of the both here. So we're going to start here in the front panel up top, the battery. We're going to turn that on. Next, we're going to come back here to our left side, and we have the fuel shutoff lever. We'll turn that on, and we'll also turn on the DEX, which is right above it. We'll turn that on. Still on the left side, more central though, on the panel, we have the fuel pumps left and right. Both of those go on. At this point, nothing happens. Don't worry, that's normal. Our next switch we're going to flip is the APU generator, and at this point we're going to have some signs of life here in the aircraft. We'll flip that on, and you're going to hear the APU fire up. And I recommend closing that canopy because the Harrier is one of the louder aircraft in DCS, and you will blow your ears out. Shut up, bitch and Betty, because she will go off a couple of times throughout this process, so just keep hitting the master caution to shut her up. Now that we have the APU fired up, what I like to do here is go ahead and turn on the displays. So we're going to start here on the left side in the MPCD, and we're going to go all the way brightness, full brightness on the left side. Over here is the knob again on top. Turn that all the way up to the right. And then right below it, you see HUD Sim right here underneath the UFC. That is the brightness for the HUD. We'll crank that all the way up. And now you'll see all three of our displays are on. One more to do is the UFC HUD, which is this brightness right here. We'll turn that on. Next, what I like to do is turn on the comms so that I hear what's going on both in the server or on the airfield as I'm getting ready to take off. You hear aircraft calling in for takeoff and landing. So we'll turn both of the comms on. I keep them at the lowest volume level at this point, just so it doesn't distract me. Once they're both on, you'll see that they have M in the comm windows. I'll turn that over to the actual channels and then change the frequency as needed for whatever airfield frequency you have, or whatever the main radio comm frequency is in the server. Change those, and then you can listen in on what's going on while you continue on with the startup process. Next, we're going to come in back over here. We're going to hit the oxygen on. We'll move the HOTAS out of the way. Right down in the center here, we have the INS knob. We're going to put that onto ground. Bitch and Betty will fire off again. Shut her up. Once we do the INS, because we are on the ground, if you're on a sea vessel, then you will put it on C. But because this is a training mission I created and everything's already inputted on here, this is already going to display okay. It's already aligned and so on. It's got the waypoints in it. So normally this would have a timer go up, and after I think it's 3 minutes or something like that, it'll show the okay for the alignment. And then once it's aligned, you can flip it over to IFA. And shut up, bitch and Betty again, and you're ready to go. You see here, I already have my waypoints, and that's all set. But just want to quickly make a note of that. Next, we're going to come over here to the front right side of the paneling. We have the three knobs right here. We're going to go ahead and turn on an RWR. I keep that on low because it is very loud. Next is going to be our countermeasures, or EXP, so we'll turn that on to auto. And then here for the ECM, to the best of my knowledge, we'll cover this in a future video, but I'll leave it off for now. We'll cover it later on. Next, we're going to go back to the center, but towards the bottom here, we're going to turn on our DMT, which is important. And then just to the left of it here, we have the FLIR. We're going to need this, especially if you're doing night ops. You're going to need that. And speaking of doing night ops, now's a good point to mention that if you are in the dark and you need more lighting, the lighting panels are right here. You have an instrument panel, lighting console, and the flood lighting for the cockpit, so you can see what you're doing in the dark. So I want to quickly mention that. All right, now that we have that, we'll quickly come over here to our left side. On our side, we have the anti-collision. We'll turn that on while we're at least in the airfield and taxiing around and taking off. So aircraft coming in and out will at least see us. Then once I go operational, I'll turn that thing off. Now, up to this point, the engine, the APU is on. The engines are not fired up yet, so we're going to go ahead and start the engine. So we're going to come back here to the right, top side of the right panel, and we're going to hit ENGST, which is engine start. Once this happens, bitch and Betty goes off again, and you're going to hear the APU shut off, and then it's going to fire back on along with the engine. And what we're going to do is we're going to wait to hear a clicking sound. That's going to be the engine igniter. Once we hear that, we'll proceed to the next step. There's the clicking. Hopefully you guys can hear it as well. Now, once you hear the clicking, let me bring the HOTAS back in here. Your throttle, which is going to be parked at 0%, we need to move it into idle. So don't worry about this. Just push your HOTAS. If you're using a HOTAS forward, it's only going to go so far, and it stops right there. Now you've moved the throttle into idle, and that is what fires off the engine to get it spooled up fully. We're going to hear the engine kind of go through its cycle, and we're going to wait for that iconic, annoying, whining engine sound of the Harrier. And we know that the engine's fully operational and running. And there it is. Engine is up and running. A few more things to do. Next, we're going to come up here to our flaps. We need to make sure those are on. To the left of it, we have our anti-skid. Now, this is important here. You're going to have it on, but in order to turn left and right, you're going to need to flip it down into nose wheel steering. Once you're in nose wheel steering, you'll be able to turn left and right at a better turn rate. But if you need fine-tuned turning, like turning on a dime, you need to have your nose wheel steering keybind. I have it on a little pinky button on my flight stick here. And once you press it in, it goes into nose wheel steering high. And that allows you to go and make those really sharp turns. So for the most part, when you're taxiing around, you can use nose wheel steering on. You're making subtle left and right movements, but when you need to make a sharp turn, you're on a flight deck or something like that, you need to turn a lot sharply, then go ahead and hit the nose wheel steering button, and it'll allow you to move much more agile. All right, last thing we're going to do on this left side here is RPS yaw. We're going to make sure that is on as well. In this case, it is already. Lastly, we're going to go ahead and get our ejection seat down and in, and that's ready to go. And then here on the left side, the throttle's blocking. I'll remove it so you can see. This right here is the parking brake, and we will go ahead and release the parking brake. You'll get the caution again. We'll stop that. We'll bring back in the flight stick and the throttle. We have chocks on, so we're not moving, but if you didn't have the chocks on and you took the brake off, the Harrier would start creeping forward a little bit, so be careful with that. And that is how you can get the Harrier cold started, fast and easy, not complicated. And at this point, we're ready to move over to the runway, where I can show you how to do a short takeoff from the runway. All right, now that we're on the runway, let me show you how to do a short takeoff here in the Harrier. I suspect that for most people that are new to the Harrier, this is going to be a much simpler, if you've flown some other aircraft in DCS, a more familiar way of taking off. Although what's unique about the Harrier and the short takeoff is, as the name suggests, you don't need a lot of runway space to take off. In fact, if we were to take a look here at where we're taking off from, it's not a whole lot of runway. It's more than enough for us to get off the ground here, and that's what makes the Harrier unique in that fashion, that you can take off from dirt roads, a FARP, short runways and such. So let me walk you through how to set it all up to do this. First, we need to make sure that as far as our nav mode goes, we're in VSTOL, and then you're gonna see we're gonna have the witch's hat right here, and that's important in all of this. Next, we're gonna come over to our flaps, push those down into stall for short takeoff mode. Next, we're going to come over here to our right MPD, or it could be a left, whichever one. I'll use my right one here. We're going to go VREST. We're going to go to STOL. And this is going to show us the parameters under which we need to take off our speed, and when we're going to rotate our nozzles, and to what degree. So, for example, if we look here, based off of our ground weight, and if you need to change it, you can also do it up here from the controls right here. Type in GWT for ground weight. You can change your weight if you need to. It'll calculate it all, and then it'll give you these numbers, these values. So we're going to do a dry takeoff here. So what it's telling us here for the NRAS nozzle rotational airspeed at 130 miles an hour, we need to rotate our nozzles to 50 degrees. And then that's what's going to allow us to get airborne. So we're going to come over here to our nozzle, and we're going to put the STOL stop up to 55, so it stops at 50, so that we don't have any accidental overage or turning past that 50-degree mark, which could be a potential issue for our takeoff. So that prevents us from over-rotating on the nozzle. So that's one big thing that helps out a lot. The other thing you need to point out here is when you're texting around in the Harrier, you're pretty much going to want to keep your nozzles at around 10 degrees rotation here. So just keep that in mind as well. The last thing we're going to do is put our water on. We'll flip that all the way on to TO, which is takeoff. Now that we have all of that set, we're going to go ahead and hold the brakes. We're going to release the parking brake, and we're going to throttle up. And once the Harrier wants to kind of push past the brakes, we're going to release it right there. And we're going to keep an eye on our airspeed. Hit that 130 mark, and then we're going to pull back. Getting close, and rotate, 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 rotate. We're going to lift back, pull back on the stick, and we're going to get that witch's hat right into those carrots right there. Wheels are going up. And we will shut up Bishop Betty for all. And at this point, we're going to keep rotating back our nozzles as we watch the airspeed up here start climbing up. We're looking to get about 170 or so, and then we'll go into full flight and we'll rotate our nozzles back to 0. So we'll keep rotating, and we're just about there. Now we'll go full flight, rotate it all the way. Once we've done that, we're going to go ahead and put our flaps into auto and change our navigations from VSTOL to nav. And at this point, we're airborne, full flight. Just that easy. All right, so I showed you how to do the short takeoff. Let's go ahead and do our landing here. Now, cool thing with the Harrier is you could land a couple different ways. One, you could do a traditional landing as you would any of the aircraft. You could also do kind of more of like a shorter landing, if you will, and then you can do the full vertical landing. I'm going to kind of show you how to do the kind of shorter landing, where it's a little bit of a mixture of both. If you need to land in an area that doesn't have a long, a lot of space or whatnot, we're going to come in here. Our airspeed is at under 250. We're going to drop the gears, and we're going to put our flaps down into STOL again. That's going to create a lot of lift for us. Keep turning here. The other important thing, remember, when we took off, we had to put the STOL stop on. We need to remove that now at this point. Pull that all the way back, so if you need to rotate your nozzles all the way 90 degrees or so, you can do it. At this point, we're going to flip over into VSTOL. So we get the witch's hat again. It's going to help guide us. And I'm going to rotate my nozzles right around the 20-degree mark. That's going to help kind of push us forward, but also kind of keep us vertical at the same time. And I'll start rotating that more and more as we get closer in. And we're going to just kind of line ourselves up here, giving it just enough juice. I'm mostly doing more stick inputs here than throttle at this point. We're chugging along just fine. And so much of this so far should be pretty familiar flying in terms of any other aircraft. Line ourselves up here. And we're going to rotate the nozzles a little bit more. Should turn that off here. Slowing down a little bit. Again, I'm rotating the nozzles. I'm a little bit high here. I'm going to drop my nose a little bit. I'm really using just a lot of stick input at this point. I'm going to crank up the rotation here. I'm going to go ahead and pull back and get that witch's hat right in the carrots right there. And I am going power up to kind of slow us down a little bit. There we go. A little harder than I'd like, but you get the gist of it all. You can kind of come in and you see right there, for the most part, there wasn't a lot of runway that I had to eat up if I timed it a little bit better. I mean, from the point where I entered in to where I landed, definitely didn't use a lot of that runway. And that's the cool thing about the Harrier, is that you can do, again, those short takeoffs, those short landings. That's what makes it just one of the many things that makes it unique right there. But you get the idea in terms of rotating your nozzle. As you come over, you're starting to keep yourself vertical and be able to land kind of like top down. And it wasn't quasi vertical and it wasn't full traditional landing, but you kind of get that mixture that allows you to kind of do both. And it's not as involved as doing a straight vertical takeoff or landing. All right, now that we did the short takeoff, let me walk you through how to do a vertical takeoff in the Harrier. And this is what makes this aircraft so special. Now, there's one big thing you need to know, which is that there is a weight capacity in order to do this. You cannot exceed 20,500 pounds. If you're over that weight, you're not getting off the ground. So you have to stay underneath that, which means you're going to have to sacrifice fuel and for sure armaments in order to pull this off. So keep that in mind. Now that we know that, let's walk through everything else you need to have set up in order to pull this off here. First, master mode VSTOL. Secondly, water H2O to TO, which is takeoff. Turn that on. Flaps down to stall. And then our nozzle, we're going to throw that all the way back to 82. And you can see that confirmation right here at 82 degrees on that rotation. Now that that's all set up, we're ready to get off the ground here. We're going to turn off the parking brake. I'm going to hold down the brakes myself. And then what's going to happen here is I'm going to throttle all the way up full power, even go a little bit past full power briefly to get up in the ground, get off the ground. We're going to climb to a certain altitude, and then I'm going to start rolling back the nozzle to start pushing us into forward flight. So we'll talk through that now. It's been a while since I've done this, but let's go ahead and give it a shot here. Been a while. Here we are, climbing up. We're going to go to about... All right, we're going to kind of point our nose down a little bit, start moving a little forward. And we're holding a hover here. Very little movement here. Goes a long way. Now I'm going to tilt my nose forward a little bit here to start pushing us into forward momentum here. And I'm going to keep an eye on the airspeed. You can start to see that climbing up. And I'm just holding that nose down a little bit. And as I'm moving forward, I am rotating the nozzles more and more. And at this point, I'm going to rotate fully. And we are in full flight. All right, now that we did the vertical takeoff, we're going to do the vertical landing. Much of everything as far as setup is going to be the same here. Make sure your master mode VSTOL. Throw your water into landing. You're going to make sure your flaps are down at stall. Make sure the stow stop is all the way back, because we're going to have to rotate the nozzles all the way back to 82 degrees. And at this point, we're going to just keep an eye. A lot of this is going to come down to throttle and stick input, and really keeping the witch's hat and the carrots to land properly. So we're going to start rotating our nozzles back, about 35 right now. And it looks like we have a clear spot. Looks like we kind of have a clear spot, probably right over there, actually. And we're just going to control ourselves here. I'm going to rotate the throttle some more. And I'm going to fully rotate it to 82. And we're going to throttle up.
Altitude.
Stop, bitch, Betty. And we're going to rotate the carriage hat right over here. We're really kind of high, actually. We're going to start to drift down, but I'm going to control our descent with the throttle. And I'm going to try and keep my witch's hat right around that carrot here. It's going to keep me dropping horizontally. And just very minute stick inputs here. I'm kind of getting a little shaky.
Power.
A little shaky there. Slow it down at the end. There we go. Got a little squirrely there for a second, but the gist of it is really when it comes down to throttling up, keeping that witch's hat near the carrots, and that again allows you to descend, you know, horizontally, right? So you don't have your tail end leading, you don't have your front end leading. You come down on you know, evenly down, and you know, you just make very little incremental movements to the flight stick. Degree or two here and there, up and down. Got a little squirrely towards the end there, but we regained it and then was able to gently come down right there in the end. And it's really that simple, and it's a lot of fun. It's going to take a lot of practice to do this. You're gonna slide off to the left. You're going to be too heavy-handed on the stick or the throttle, and you're going to fly. You're just going to die a lot. Don't give up and stay, you know, at it until you really dial it in. And once you get it, it's a cool feeling to be able to do that, where you have other aircraft around you. You just take off vertically and they just look at you because they're like, oh, that's pretty cool. Because it is. It really is cool. So that's it, boys. Hopefully this tutorial for how to start with the Harrier cold starts, STOL Take Off, vertical landings, and all of that has been helpful. Trying to give it to you as fast and easy as possible to allow you to get out in the air with this aircraft and have a good time with it. Let me know how it works. Callsign, Grimey out.